Hi there, Karen Flaherty from Living by Human Design. Hope you're doing well today. Today's Human Design weather is about the gate 34, which is all about multitasking and power. It's a great energy to have during Thanksgiving week, right? Okay, so this week we got the Sun in Gate 34. It started on November 22nd and it goes until November 27th. So it kind of bookends the entire week of Thanksgiving here in the United States. And so it's an energy that a lot of people that allows a lot of people to feel like they've got a lot of energy during this week. So whether you're traveling or cooking or just visiting family and friends or any of that, you're going to have a lot more energy to do it. Whether you've got the sacral usually defined or not, everybody's going to feel like they've got the energy to go and go and go. And then they might crash after it's all over. No surprise there, right? That the weekend after Thanksgiving, most people are pretty tired. It's because of this energy. It's there every year. It's always the same time, and it always bookends the Thanksgiving holidays. So what we've got is the 34 coming off the sacral and going up and around to the 20, which is in the throat. And so it completely motorizes the throat. So the throat's defined and the sacral's defined, and that's going to be all week. So we've got the 34 in the sun and then the 20 in the earth. And the 20 is called metamorphosis. The which is really about it's a vocal energy, it's a voice energy, it's saying something in the moment that changes the room, basically, that changes the atmosphere or the environment or whatever's going on there. It's probably why a lot of Thanksgiving get-togethers can be a little tense sometimes, a little it's like, the crazy uncle is saying something, or the other person is, spouting off about something. It can allow people to feel like they have the energy to speak when they don't normally feel like they have the energy to speak. So it kind of emboldens people. And this is why it's always an interesting energy. For manifesting generators, it works well. And that's basically what happens all week, is that all of us feel like we're manifesting generators because we have the sacral defined, if we don't usually, and then we have the throat motorized, which many of us don't usually have. Only 40% of the population usually has the throat motorized. That's all the manifestors and all the manifesting generators. So just imagine now the rest of the population, the other 60% who don't usually have a motorized throat, will have a motorized throat during this week. So buyer beware. Beware of the people you're talking to, beware of the energies that are around, and beware of the things that come out of your mouth too, because don't be surprised, some odd things might come out. So this 2034 is there all week, and it goes through the 27th. It's called the Channel of Charisma, and it does give us all the energy of the manifesting generator, and we still got a few planets that are retrograde. So with the sun in gate 34, typically we call this the multitasking gate. It's the power of the great, or just power in the original I Ching, because the idea here is that anybody who can multitask well and efficiently and over time consistently is somebody who can have that power to go and go and go, and as a result have power that they may not otherwise have. So what it says is power is only great when its display or use serves the common good. So because this is connected to the sacral, and because the sacral is all about our workforce and life force energy, it usually is about helping everybody, helping the common good. It's never an individual energy, although it is part of the individual circuit. 3420 is definitely an individual circuit channel. The incarnation crosses this week are the crosses of the sleeping phoenix, power, and duality. And then in the gate 20, as I said, it's called metamorphosis, or contemplation in the now in the original I Ching. So it's having the ability to say something that can change the feeling or the demeanor of wherever you are. It's recognition and awareness in the now, which transforms understanding into right action. And so it helps to move things along but in the moment it might sound a little funny. It might be a little off. It might sound a little, it's always correct, but it might sound funny. And sometimes these things just pop out of people's mouths and they're not really even sure where they came from. In the Gene Keys, superficiality is the shadow, self-assurance is the gift, and presence is the CD. And so in the Gene Key 34, the shadow is force, the gift is strength, and the CD is majesty. And so with the force, you could be multitasking, but you could be forcing things to happen, right? That's really not the energy that we want here. That's the shadow energy. That's where you're trying to make things happen as opposed to allowing them to flow into being. So, and even the graphic says often strength is about not moving at all. And that's where the real majesty is. That's where the highest level of this occurs, is when things happen. You're in the flow, you're intending for things to happen, and you don't really need to move that much at all to have them happen. So in a world where the lower frequencies dominate, true inner strength never goes unnoticed. So where everybody else is frenetically moving around this week and making things happen and, putting, the finishing touches on what's supposed to be a big family tradition and family meal and all that stuff, the quiet one is the one who's usually getting the most done. The person who's, off in the corner in the kitchen usually is in charge, right? And getting the most stuff done. It's not the person who's yelling directions and telling everybody else what to do, usually. This Gate 34 or this Gene Key 34 is really pretty powerful and can get a lot done, and it's one of those things where they kind of make it look simple. They make it look like they didn't, just make 3 pies at a time, but they did. And he also says if this CD dawns in a person, they do not communicate through words or language, but through their actions and movement. So it is a very action-packed kind of energy that doesn't necessarily need to be vocal. In other words, you don't have to have the 20 attached to the throat for this to be a very potent energy. This 34 can just hang out by itself. It can be a hanging gate. It can be connected to something else. In your chart, it can form a channel with a number of other gates, actually. There's the 3410, there's 3457, as well as the 3420. So it's still individual energy. It still can get a lot done, but it doesn't have to be attached to the 20 necessarily to accomplish a lot. So we've got a number of people here, and they're all pretty active people. These are all people who are manifesting generators, who've got the 3420 in their charts, and who use it for their passion, their purpose, their, whatever their livelihood is, in a way that has made them famous and made them the personalities that they are. So everybody from Toulouse-Lautrec, the artist, Hoagy Carmichael, the musician, Charles de Gaulle, the former Prime Minister of France, Jimi Hendrix, who we'll be talking about in a minute, the Kennedys, both John Jr. and Caroline Kennedy, children of Jackie and JFK, both have birthdays during this period. Charles Schultz, Scott Joplin, Billie Jean King, Steve Van Zandt, famously of Bruce Springsteen's band and acting career, and lots of different things. I mean, these are people who, because they're manifesting generators, they're never just in one. They're usually not just in one lane, basically. They can do many different things. They can do many different things well, and they like doing them. So we're going to be talking about Jimi Hendrix today. Jimi Hendrix, who was guitarist, singer, songwriter, and thought to be, even though his career was very short, one of the most celebrated guitarists and musicians of the 20th century. So he was born, actually, Johnny Allen Hendrix, in Seattle, Washington. He was born on November 27th, 1942. He did die at 27 years of age in 1970. And he was a manifesting generator with a 6-2 profile and the left angle cross of duality. So he was really only working as a musician from about for about 8 years, from around 1962 to 1970 when he passed away. So 8 years, basically from the time he was 18 until he passed. And yet his influence on music throughout the 20th century made a huge difference for a lot of people, because it was just as electric guitars were getting infamous, actually. And what he did was I don't know music. I'm not a guitarist, but what he did was bring in fuzz and feedback and distortion into the electric guitar realm that changed the way almost every rock musician from then on worked with electric guitars. And so this would have been starting in so around 1962-ish, just as rock was getting really prevalent in music, and continues to this day. The fact that he can put the guitar behind him and still play. I've actually seen people do that. It's an amazing feat, and he was the first one to do it, as far as we know. So his chart is one of an archetypical manifesting generator, because he has this 3420 that goes from the sacral up to the throat, and he has the 20 actually conscious and unconscious. He also has the 31-7, which is the channel of the alpha. So he's got a number of channels, including that 3420, which is the channel of charisma, which he certainly had, right? And he had enthusiasm also coming off the throat. He also had details and the storyteller and change. And he also has the gate of influence and leadership. This channel 31-7, we call the channel of the alpha. And he was quite a presence on any stage. He had the gate 1, which is making a creative contribution to the world. He had the 46-29, which is all about it's called the channel of discovery. It's about really being persistent and determined, and, being great at his craft and being committed to his craft. So it's persistence, determination, and doing something actually that it makes doing something that looks easy to other people, but it's really very difficult. And the degree of difficulty of the things he did was really beyond the pale at that point. People were amazed at what he could do. He also had the will center connected to the emotional solar plexus, so relatively mild emotional wave, with the 40-37, which is all about making and keeping promises. But that will allowed him to keep going and going and going. And the emotional solar plexus would allow him to have the, kind of the ups and downs that artists and musicians have, that allow them to be creative. When he's down, he's probably writing songs, and when he's up, he's selling them and on stage. He had the 9, which is all about focus, the 55, spiritual abundance, the 30, intensity. Jimi Hendrix, if nothing else, was an intense person. And people could feel that from him. He had the open head ajna, which meant that he, basically information was coming in all the time, in all different types of ways. He got his inspiration in basically unlimited ways. He had the open spleen and the open root, which would put pressure on him, because with the open root, other people's needs and wants would feel like pressure to him. The open spleen, it was completely open, so you can think of that as either fearful or complete fearlessness. That would be one of the ways that, he probably came in as somebody who was ahead of his time in terms, because a lot of kids these days are coming in with this completely open spleen, and Jimi Hendrix was somewhat fearless in the way certainly in the way he approached his craft, and certainly in the way he, portrayed himself to others. He joined the army at 15, not thrown out. He was released the next year because they realized he was only 15. He had barely turned 16 when they released him from the army. And then he made his way to Nashville and started on what they called at that point the Chitlin tour, Chitlin circuit, which was Black artists touring around the South mostly, and making music wherever they went. And so he learned his craft from some of the greats, and was working with them at an early age, and then was out on his own. He made by the age of 27, he had made 3 albums that had all gone on to become hits, and are now considered, only one made it to #1, but all 3 of them are now considered to be in the top 100 albums of all time. So he was a force to be reckoned with because of all this energy, and it wasn't connected. It was split energy, but that's a lot of energy to have in one chart, with only and 3 motors, right? And the defined G center and the motorized throat. That was, he was a force to be reckoned with when he walked into a room, and he played that out over time. So besides the 3420 and the cross of duality, which had the 40 and the 37 right up in his incarnation cross too, so that was important in his chart. So interesting. There's only a few incarnation crosses that have channels right in them. So this 3420 is one channel, but the 4037 is another channel. So those are the biggest themes for him, is, making contracts and being out in the community. 3420 with creating charisma on stage, and then the 4629 being the 31-7 being about influence and the alpha, and really taking on the leadership position in his own band, and the 4629, which is all about doing something that nobody else can do, basically, and having the persistence and determination to do that, and the commitment. And he certainly had that commitment to everything he did. So that's Jimi Hendrix, and it's interesting that they still, he's still talked about. He's been dead now since 1970, so that's almost over 50 years ago, and he's still being talked about. They're still finding new recordings that have kind of been uncovered, and that they're making new recordings of, and he's still talked about. He's still revered. He's still talked about. He's still honored, and that was a lot to accomplish in 27 years on this earth. So happy birthday, Jimi. So I hope you have a wonderful week. If you're in the United States, happy Thanksgiving. You will feel that energy of the 3420, that channel of charisma, and having the energy in both the sacral and in the throat. So again, be wise about how you use it, and watch how other people are using it. It's always an interesting week. So enjoy, do what feels good for you, and use your voice in a way that makes a difference for the people around you. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Be well. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.